Yeah, Naveed, thank you for joining us for future blockchain discussions for 2019. Really appreciate you taking the time. Maybe a fun thing to do would be tell us a little bit about how you got into the world of crypto.
Sure. Well, which is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'd be happy to share how I entered here. It was not a thoughtful decision, exactly. I watched Bitcoin rise when it did all those years ago, and that's interesting. I wouldn't know what to do with it, but my friends who like to build machines added more GPUs to the machines and went mining, but I didn't do much of that. I collected a little of that just because my friends did it, but certainly nothing to write home about. And then, as a curiosity, I paid attention, but never really did much with it. But all that changed November of 2017. I was approached by one of the partners in Algorand. They liked my background. At the time, I was working at Mozilla. I ran a bunch of engineering teams there, including the JavaScript team. And what they thought would make sense for a company in this space is it should be open source, and anyone they brought into head engineering should have that in their DNA, in their culture, so they could inspire the growing engineering team to build in that direction and to do what it takes to launch successfully in an open source world. So that's how I got connected to the project, through the investors and partners.
So what's your role now, and what are you guys looking to achieve?
So I'm head of engineering, so I took on that role, and that was really exciting. And I started growing the team and had fun, finding people who had that sort of temperament and mindset, and they're all amazing people. But the part of the Algorand story that actually made me say yes is our founder, Sylvia Macaulay, is incredibly gifted at persuasion, and he was able to sell me on a vision that considering I spent no time thinking about the crypto world in that way other than a curiosity, I left my first meeting with him going, wow, that's completely different.
Yeah.
And that is why I jumped on board.
Few bigger opportunities.
Yeah, it's so, he sold it to me, and I mean, I was working with Mozilla at the time, so I was probably susceptible to this sort of thinking. But this vision of there's so many entities in the way between what I want to do and actually doing it. Maybe blockchain is a mechanism for bypassing them. But what we have today doesn't work. And that's what I knew about Bitcoin. I mean, the power usage was already ramping up even back when I first got involved. And the technologies that have come since then, those are always points of concern. So I never thought of them as anything more than curiosities. But Sylvia was selling me this scalable, super secure solution that he imagined, and I was all in. I mean, I went from not even thinking of that as a opportunity to I want to be part of this project.
So you're taking on one of the biggest problems in the space, scalability.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about how you're looking to solve this. What's the insight?
Okay. Well, I think scalability means different things to different people. So defining that a little is helpful. We often hear about this project or that project hitting a particular TPS. But that TPS by itself, transaction per second, seems like a useful number, but it has to be in some sort of context. If that transaction per second number is on this machine with no connections outside world doing everything by itself, well, 1 million is certainly possible. Yeah, you could shard to one computer and it go crazy. Sharding and all those ways of breaking the problem domain up, we should definitely follow that and look at that. But can't we do better on the firmament first? And that is what Algorand is going after first. All those subsequent techniques and tricks to carve out the space like sharding, we will also do. But if we end up an order or two magnitude faster on the global agreed upon blockchain, then we have a firmament that anyone can build on, and we have better guarantees. And so that's where we're starting.
Great. And so paint a picture for me of if you guys are successful, it's out in the world and widely adopted. What does the future look like with Algorand in it?
Okay, well, that's how much can I say about that versus what I'd like to say about that. There might be some sort of tension. I think the part that's fair to say is if we have a blockchain that has the performance and the security while being a true blockchain, truly decentral, I think the whole world will change how they think about it. Right now, there's a lot of proof of concepts in large corporations, a lot of proof of concepts in startups, but are there a lot of viable, useful businesses and useful work getting done on the blockchain space? Maybe. I think we would see way more of that happening once something like this was out there. And it wouldn't take long before all that sort of amazing vision, those promises of blockchain start to quickly become realized because you now have something you can build on where that's actually possible and not just a proof of concept at best.
Great. So if you're ready, I'd love to jump into some rapid fire questions.
Rapid fire, okay,
and
we'll see how rapid I can be.
You can answer them as long as you want.
Okay.
But I'll ask them quickly. What do you think the top factors hindering blockchain adoption are?
Oh, okay, that's a good one. There government regulations, lack of regulations and active anti-regulations, cool big entities from looking at it. Big entities being other governments, other corporations, and even high net worth people. They're just like, I can't take that risk because I don't know that I might be on the wrong side of the regulation that may come down.
Yeah. So do you think the uncertainty with regulation is actually hampering innovation?
It's definitely changing how we, Algorand ourselves, think about it and those that we've talked to. For example, there are places, domains like Singapore that have said this is legal. If you do this script, you're on the right side. And when we see that sort of guidance being laid down, it attracts us to spending more time in those domains and those geographies. But in the U.S., obviously, I'm from the U.S. We're working here. It's tougher. We're actively interacting with the people who would eventually make a decision there. But so long as there's an unknown, we are a corporation. We are trying to do great work, but we have to play by the rules in the place that we are in.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The results of the Future Blockchain Survey say that the vast majority, 80+% of people who are operating in this space, don't feel they have clarity on the regulatory front.
Yes.
Which is really challenging.
It does change how, because you have to factor in risk in everything you do. And if you don't have clear regulations from the government, well, that's infinite risk because they can stop nearly anything.
Yeah. So do you think regulation in the U.S. is getting better or worse?
I don't know that there's a ton of guidance yet that's been set down. I'm hopeful about the outcome. I'm hopeful because those people that I know who are having those conversations are hopeful. And I have to trust that they have enough influence and are able to get us in a good place.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. So changing topics a little bit, back to scalability.
Yeah.
When do you expect scalability to be solved?
What does solved mean? I think if you ask, is scalability solved on a regular PC with no blockchain, there will be use cases where even that's not true. Scalability is a continuum. I think that when Algorand releases, we will put a new milestone in place on what scalability ought to be for the firmament, the base layer. And at that point, many options will become possible, but there will be always a place for let's make it faster, let's make it reach more people. How do I solve transactions to the moon and back or to Mars? We're like that, human beings. We like to keep pushing our boundaries.
Absolutely. So are you a bigger fan of layer 1 or layer 2?
That's a really interesting question. I don't have a thoughtful answer on that because I haven't thought about it heavily. I am a systems programmer by trade, by past. I love delving into how they work, how to build them. I love building this one. However, I spend enough time with people to recognize that the coolest technology I can envision that no one else uses, it ends up being completely useless. So let's say I'm exactly in the middle.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. switching context to mining a little bit.
Okay.
So, do you think mining today is decentralized or centralized?
I have been probably caught on tape saying it's centralized,
Okay.
so I should probably go with that.
Consistency is good.
That's right.
And to some extent. So do you think the average person can participate as a miner?
Not meaningfully, no.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, it requires intense resources, and not just hardware resources, but even the power consumption. And frankly, it's even more than that, right? Once you have enough mining and hash power in one place, you can make your own decisions if you want to. And we've seen a little bit of that craziness happen when hash power has been applied to alternate coins in the past months.
Okay, great. And as we look forward, do you think mining is becoming more centralized or more decentralized?
I don't think it's changing meaningfully, but I think it's so centralized right now that it can go from 2 to 1. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll go from 2 to 3. The way I see the mining pools work in certain of the coins. But I think it's probably reasonably stable. They have a vested interest in keeping the status quo now.
Yeah, cool. So Naveed, what's one startup or project that is not Algorand, but you respect highly and you think are really doing interesting things?
Oh, that's a tough question to put me on the spot, because names, they come and go so ephemerally. There is I don't recall the name, but there's an Italian startup that I ran into while I was in Singapore, and they were doing work around decentralized, not exchanges, but decentralized asset management. So if you consider a mutual fund, how's a mutual fund governed, and who owns that, who creates that basket, and selling the mutual fund, does it sell the percentage of this items underneath it? How all those mechanics work? Well, in the traditional world, you have a lot more control over those details. But in the crypto world, if you're trying to build that, it's complicated. And these folks, their backgrounds were in finance primarily, but they had some really clever ideas on how where you and I could own our individual components of these crypto assets, but have someone else manage the mutual fund ratios for us, so we wouldn't have to be experts in de-risking our portfolio.
Adjusting what's in your wallet.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it was very, very cool. People are thinking about really interesting ideas.
Cool. Yeah. Well, if you really enjoyed the conversation,
I did as well.
Thank
you.
Getting us up to speed with what you're working on Algorand and
my pleasure.
the rapid fire. So appreciate it.
Hopefully I was able to keep up this time around.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.